but breaking from convention these days. Like, there's so many examples, like investing in alternative energies, or reimagining healthcare, or high-speed trains, mass transit. These new modes of existing have become suspect in our present-day society. We seem frozen in our ways, unable to depart from routine convention and the business of the day. Now, even as we continue to exploit our resources, pollute our rivers and air, forsake the sacredness of our wilderness, our repressed imagination cannot lift us, cannot rescue us from old traditions or fossilized thinking that precludes just imagining a different kind of world. Now, in the Feast of Fools, at least people took a break from the ordinary behavior and dared society to examine the contradictions of their times and, of course, all the hypocrisy that was going on. I mean, can you imagine what they would have done back then to our people today who call themselves job providers, sending their companies overseas, or the Tea Party, or climate deniers? Can you imagine just for a day to let those fools take them on? We are in short supply of imagination. I think we're in short supply of fools. Did you know that the largest crowds that were drawn to the Globe Theater were always those who came to laugh, they wanted to laugh with Shakespeare's fools? That's why they went. His fools were always clever peasants who could outwit the people of high social standing. Oh, what fun that must have been. But you know, it was not just entertainment. Shakespeare took the longtime character of a jester who juggled and tumbled and did pratfalls, and then he molded the jester into an entirely new concept, the fool who could stand on a stage as a character, speaking outside the narrow confines of what society deemed acceptable. It was the fool who addressed such themes as love, all those human foibles that produce anxiety within people, because what they said was actually the truth of matters. It was a truth that we have failed to understand because it just came outside the normal context, the normal convention of how we lead our lives. They were exposing the playgoers to a new kind of truth. In Isaac Asimov's Guide to Shakespeare, he says, that, of course, is the greatest secret of the successful fool, that he is no fool at all. Is it fair to say, or perhaps actually this is more of a question, that societal change is vital to our lives? And if that's true, then where are the dreamers, the visionaries? Where are the fools? Albert Camus celebrated what he called the unfettered imagination. What a concept, the unfettered imagination. He asks, how else can we contest reality and create history unless we enter fantasy? He calls it being part of the metaphysical rebellion. And I think that's what all fools aspire to join into this metaphysical rebellion. Can you imagine if we had a banner outside the church? Enter ye who want to join the metaphysical rebellion. I don't know if that would draw more people in or just kind of confuse the daylights. I'd like that. The point is, I think we're kind of stuck in our thinking. Now, there are great innovations taking place, like how we can conduct our entire lives from a cell phone. That's great. But I think we're stuck in our thinking when it comes to envisioning a world that embraces compassion where, well, just to begin with, something like health care is seen as a basic human right. And it is our responsibility to bring that to bear. I draw an image from our reading this morning where the native fool, the Koshari, is persecuted by the Europeans who invaded the tribal lands. And the Kosharis had to withdraw and build secrecy around their ritualistic purpose. Now, I maintain that persecution is an apt description of what has happened to today's dreamers and visionaries and fools. Lewis Mumford, the great sociologist, philosopher, wrote that utopia has long been a name for the unreal and the impossible. We have set utopia over and against the world. And as a matter of fact, he says, it is our utopias that make the world tolerable for us. The cities and mansions that people dream of are those in which they finally live. So Mumford is big on this vision thing without having to ask whether or not it is even possible. Only through vision and fantasies can existing societies be cracked open and newly created. A quick example that leaps to mind, and there are so many, is the fantasy that has created the electric car. Yet the closed society in which we live, the enormous political pressures are applied to maintain the status quo, make a new vision of how we can live and sustain the earth almost impossible to accomplish. As an article in last week's New York Times put it, the electric car is unplugged. All these forces against this vision are coming into play because people want to protect their turf, they want to protect their wealth, their investments, their greed, and everything is being sacrificed as a result. It's impossible for me to separate imagining a different kind of world from the mission of this church. Churches in general are kind of a strange business. What separates churches and religions from each other, in my way of thinking, has less to do with theological differences, which really don't pose that much of a hurdle, and have more to do with how much or how little a church invests in maintaining the status quo. That's where churches differ. That's where we all part company with one another. How much do we invest in the status quo? As we know, religion too often legitimates existing institutions which support power and oppression. The role of the church in Nazi Germany is a prime example. Or we can witness rather sadly or with astonishment the Catholic Church's strong resistance to liberation theology to help the poor in Latin America. No, they didn't go there. They supported the structures of oppression. And in today's world, the church can mitigate envisioning a new world by slamming the door shut on stem cell research or other forays into medical research. And yet the church can also protest against injustice and suffering with visions of, we can use theological language, kingdom of God, New Jerusalem, or just the secular language which brings hope and peace and compassion throughout the world. This church exists, I deeply believe. This church exists in order to spark change. We are the fools. We are foolish enough to speak a truth that a new way of imagining the world is possible. What goes on in this church, really, we're kind of participating in a social fantasy, envisioning a new world without necessarily asking if it is possible, nor dismissing it because others say, oh, your ideas are so utopian, you can't go there. We say, no, we're the fools. We're going to speak the truth. We try to have as much impact as possible on moving society towards a new vision of justice, a new vision of healing, a new vision of responsibility to humanity and to the earth. We are dreaming of new ways for the people of this earth to live together. And yes, our progressive theology, that's what people want to call it, I don't know, does cause some people to laugh nervously. Like the role of the kosharis, and indeed the role of the universal clown throughout the ages, the intent always was to reverse normal conduct. That's what we're about, to reverse normal conduct. As Harvey Cox pointed out, even in the biblical portrait of Christ, there are clown symbols. For after all, didn't Jesus want to reverse normal conduct? This is how Cox puts it. He says, like the jester, Christ defies custom and scorns crowned heads. Like a wandering troubadour, he has no place to lay his head. Like the clowns in the circus parade, he satirizes existing authority by riding into town replete with regal pageantry when he has no earthly power. Like a minstrel, he frequents dinners and parties. And at the end, he is costumed by his enemies in a mocking caricature of royal paraphernalia. He is crucified amid sniggers and taunts with a sign over his head that lampoons his laughable claim. I like to think of authorities made nervous by fools. I like to think of life's conventions shattered by fools. I like to think of new ways of being and relating inspired by fools. And so, suffer fools gladly. We laugh at them, we tease them, we endure them. They may well change the world.